advice do you have for students who may not have such a stellar undergrad GPA, but have done, other degrees like a master's or an, MPA, MBA? What role does all of that play in a low undergrad GPA?
So I'm going to answer Maya's questions, but I'm also going to answer a few other things that weren't necessarily in that question. So for starters, I want you to think about your GPA similar to how you think about your LSAT. So think about medians again. The ideal is to have that median GPA that a school, has calculated and put out into the world. However, if you don't have that median GPA, know that just means half had above, half had below. So there are a number of things that students can do if they feel like they do not have the GPA that they desire or that makes them competitive. And so something that we often see I often saw when I worked in admissions with minority students is that many underrepresented students were first-generation students. Maybe they had to work throughout undergrad, etc. And so to the extent that there are extenuating factors that may have impacted your GPA, feel free to tell the admissions council or the admissions committee about that. So some schools actually have questions built into their application about that. I know that's something I loved about UCLA. They actually have all these questions built into their application. However, even though I love that, there were a number of students who would not answer those questions. But when they came and spoke to me in my office, they would kind of reveal all this information. It's like, why didn't you tell us in your application? But know that the school asks those questions, that they are seeking that information for a reason. Think of your admissions committee as your public defender if you were in court. The information that you give them is so that they can go and fight for you. And so to the extent that there's something that you think can help someone fight for you, you need to include it in their application. If they don't ask questions for that, do some optional essays. And so talk about those things that may have impacted your GPA. If you didn't do so well your first year of undergrad or your second year of undergrad, but you did stellar when you got into your major, make sure that you highlight that in your application some way, even if that's an optional essay. Even though the admissions committee will be looking at your transcript, it doesn't hurt to just spell that out so that they know, like, hey, I looked at their transcript too quick. Let me go back and look at that closer. Like, oh yeah, they did really amazing their last 2 years. So feel free to talk about that. If you are someone who gets a graduate degree, know that your graduate GPA doesn't offset your undergraduate GPA. I want to throw that out there because I know a lot of students will tell me, I was told to go get a graduate degree because I didn't do too well in my undergrad. And so I want you to think about the questions that admissions council or committee is asking themselves and answering while they're looking through your application. The question of, will this person succeed in law school, is typically answered by looking through your transcript, looking through your LSAT or your other standardized test scores, as well as looking through your letters of recommendation. The question of, will this person contribute to the classroom, be employable, do well when they get out of law school, those are questions that are answered by looking at your graduate transcript. So know that even though these are things that will be positive factors when you're applying to law school, a graduate GPA won't necessarily offset your undergraduate GPA. So if you're someone who has a really great undergraduate GPA, then you may have a bit of wiggle room when it comes to your LSAT score. If you're someone who has a not so good undergraduate GPA, then you probably need to work a bit harder to make sure that you try to get a great LSAT score. And so many students that apply to law schools or get into law schools are what are considered splitters, which means maybe one of their numbers is at or above the median and the other one isn't. And so think of yourself in that way. Do you have at least one of the numbers? And if not, the LSAT score is usually the one that you have some power to control by the time that you're getting ready to apply to law school.